I praise God because we have a God who takes our prayers seriously, who answers our prayers. Nehemiah chapter 2 verse 1 says, "And it came to pass in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was before him, that I took wine and gave it to the king." We find in the month of Nisan, which means Nisan is the first month in the Hebrew calendar. Nehemiah prayed in the 9th month, Kislev. And now these 4 months he has been praying to God. And now we see God answering Nehemiah's prayer. We see God rewarding Nehemiah's concern and Nehemiah's burden. I want to highlight 4 similarities between Daniel and Nehemiah. Daniel and Nehemiah, both of them held high positions in their lands of captivity. For example, Daniel was the chief of wise men in Babylon. Nehemiah was a cupbearer. Very important royal position in the government of Persia. It is told that in the kingdom of Assyria, the cupbearer was also the chief minister. Which means Nehemiah, even though he was a Jew, was holding a very high position in the Persian government. Both Nehemiah and Daniel, they served among heathen rulers. For example, Daniel served during the kingship of Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar, Darius and Cyrus. They worked with rulers who did not really know the true God. Even Nehemiah, he worked with Artaxerxes, very important position, but having good relationship with these great rulers, even though they did not share the same faith. The third one, both Nehemiah and Daniel had burden for their homeland. We find Daniel turning towards Jerusalem and praying to God. And Daniel, through his friendship with King Cyrus, he brought about the decree of freedom so that the Jews can return to Jerusalem because he had burden for his homeland. Even Nehemiah, burden for the homeland. When Hanani came from Jerusalem, he asked, "What is going on? How are the people in Jerusalem?" And he speaks to this king in 2nd chapter, verse 3. He says to the king, "How can I be happy when the city of my fathers is in ruins?" Both having burden for their homelands. We find Nehemiah and Daniel were great prayer warriors. Daniel prayed to God. We find at least 2 times in Daniel chapter 2, we find Daniel was praying. And in Daniel chapter 9, Daniel prayed. In Daniel chapter 10, Daniel fasted and prayed for 3 weeks. And Daniel received answers. Nehemiah also fasted and prayed. Both were great prayer warriors. Nehemiah did not give up. For 3 months, he was praying. And so in the month of Nisan, God answered that prayer. How did God answer that prayer? While Nehemiah was serving the king noticed the face of Nehemiah. And he said, therefore the king said to me in verse 2, "Why is your face sad? Since you are not sick, there is nothing but sorrow of heart." So I became dreadfully afraid. God is moving things. God is in the business of answering prayers. And so Nehemiah, he presented his request to the king. Verse 3, "May the king live forever. Why should my face not be sad when the city, the place of my father's tombs, lies waste and its gates are burnt with fire?" Nehemiah spoke to the king. And the king's heart was moved because God was not only working with Nehemiah, God was working with the king. And the king said, "What do you request?" And so Nehemiah, immediately, he thanked God in his heart and he asked for God's intervention. And so he asked for permission to go to Jerusalem. Nehemiah mentions in verse 6, "Then the king said to me, the queen also sitting beside him, 'How long will your journey be? When will you return?'" We see this seems to be a beautiful meeting. And Nehemiah took advantage. We find God answering prayers, God using people, because God using people of all backgrounds. Here, even though the king and the queen were not worshippers of the true God, God working through them to fulfill His plans. God worked through Cyrus. God worked through Darius. God worked through several kings, even though they did not know the true God, because everyone belongs to God. The earth and its fullness belong to our great God. Today, I don't know what is your request to God, but I want you to understand, God treats our prayers seriously, and God will orchestrate for you. Nehemiah was sent to Jerusalem. Nehemiah took this journey from Shushan to Jerusalem. And we will see in tomorrow's lesson what happened to Nehemiah. How did Nehemiah undertake the rebuilding of the wall of Jerusalem? God bless you, because God is going to do great things through you and through me for His glory.